two-party system, really, so to try and break into that is very, very difficult. I mean, you only got to look at UKIP at the last election, got 4 million votes and got 1 seat. You know, it's very, very difficult under our electoral system to do that. So I think the best he can do is to try and influence the political debate from the sidelines and with like-minded politicians. Nick Clegg, interestingly enough, was one of the first people to come out on Twitter to say, I agreed with every word of what Tony Blair said. So, but I mean, there's no...
He's said similar things in the past, hasn't
Exactly.
he? I think with people like Clegg and Tony Blair, the EU is in their DNA. He said himself he felt compelled.
They've had a lot of meetings as well, haven't they, Clegg and Tony Blair?
Compelled to come out.
Tim Farron as well. Tim Farron and
they've been discussing this
CITI.
For quite some time.
The other interesting thing is the fact that he's strayed into the Scottish independence debate as well. I don't think he really had to go there. He said that the possible breakup of the UK is on the table again, and I think he said the case for Scottish independence is much more credible in the context of post the EU referendum vote.
Nicola Sturgeon thinks so as well.
She commended him on Twitter. Indeed.
He got some support. The Daily Express put it quite bluntly, actually, as arrogant Tony Blair tries to block Brexit. A new poll reveals an increasing number of voters are demanding get us out of the EU. And this is a credible poll, isn't it, Kevin?
Yeah, it's ICM, respected pollsters, 68%. People just want us to get on with getting out of the EU now. And I think that is the big problem that somebody like Tony Blair has got, is that all the polls, this isn't a rogue poll, all the polls that we've seen since the Brexit vote, none have indicated that there's been any kind of buyer's remorse, any change of heart by people. I think now most people accept, regardless of whether they voted Remain or Leave, they accept that was the result, and now they've just got to get on with leaving, really. You know, so there's no indication out there that there's a massive clamour that people regret.
He acknowledged that, to be fair. He said that today. There wasn't. He said there's no widespread appetite for this, but he said that people should have the right to, to have an informed say.
See, I mean, look, it's by no means scientific, and certainly not as scientific as an ICM poll, but I was discussing this with one of our political correspondents, Ian Watson, earlier tonight, that when you go on radio phone-in shows, of which there's quite a few on the BBC, a couple of which I present, you do get people who voted for Brexit very angry. They don't really feel they're getting what they voted for. They don't really feel that the white paper that Theresa May has produced was about the core issues of immigration. They still feel they're being shortchanged.
And they also feel that it's taken too much time. You know, I speak to MPs who'll tell you that their constituents, many of them, don't understand why we haven't left the European Union now. Already? You know, they think, well, in a general election, you change government, it happens that day. Why are we still in the EU? So
doesn't that suggest then that the I'm not, this isn't my opinion before you start tweeting, but does that not suggest the possibility that there are some people who were confused, there are some people that didn't quite get it or didn't know what they were voting for? I mean, that it does need looking into again.
Well, the key thing is no one knew what they were voting for because you couldn't know what you were voting for.
That's what he said. That's what Tony Blair's putting out.
He made this point, and the Lib Dems have repeatedly made this point. They have said that the EU referendum was a vote to leave, and there should be another referendum on the destination, so where we end up. So he's saying today that the first vote was in ignorance, there needs to be an informed vote now. But obviously, as you say, next to that, there's the clamour of those who are very determined that they want to see Brexit delivered straight away and as quickly as possible.
OK, shall we move on to the Daily Mail? Shopkeeper who spoke for Britain is quite a bizarre headline, actually, isn't it? But what it's talking about is business rates and business rate rises. So business rates, my understanding of business rates is that it's just like council tax for people that own shops and businesses. Essentially,
yeah. It's quite similar to the old household rates, the way it's calculated. There's a formula, and there's been a revaluation, first one in 7 years, and it looks like small to medium-sized shops and businesses are going to be clobbered essentially come April when they have to pay their bills. And this has been a bit of a slow burn as far as the government's concerned, and it's kind of blindsided them almost. And there is now a real head of steam building up against these rises, because I mean some shops, I mean it's thousands of pounds, massive increase in their rates, which they're going to have to find from somewhere, and they're going to have to make people redundant or have to increase their prices that they charge consumers. So there's a lot of pain coming, and there's now, as I say, there's a head of steam behind this campaign now to get the government to try, and they can't sort of overturn the decision, the revaluation, but if they can perhaps in the budget, if the Chancellor can bring in some kind of relief for the businesses which are going to be worst affected. And the splash in the Daily Mail, this shopkeeper is a guy called Tom Innes, who is a wine merchant in Monmouth in Wales, and he has written to David Gauke, who's the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and it's a really strongly worded letter which the Daily Mail publishes in full, and he's basically accusing Mr Gauke and the government of being completely out of touch, stuck in Westminster, don't realise what the reality is like out there. High streets are on their knees, empty shop spaces.
And as we know,
sorry
to interrupt, but another interesting point to raise is we know from today that the growth is much slower than predicted as well. There is a downturn in what consumers are willing to spend.
Exactly, and I think as well, I know, forgive me, I don't know exactly how the formula works, but it's slightly perverse in that larger businesses like supermarkets, they'll actually, many of them will see their rates come down, while smaller, less profitable businesses are going to have to end up paying more. So the whole thing seems a terrible mess, and the government are going to have to sort it out pretty quickly, I think.
But Lindsay, aren't the government arguing that it is going to be actually better for most and okay, a little bit worse for the few?
Yeah, they're arguing that some people will do better out of this, and they're also arguing, I think David Gauke said today, or said repeatedly, that actually this system needs to be brought up to date with the with property prices. So that's the point that he's making. But we were quite surprised when we saw the headline on the Mail, shopkeeper who spoke for Britain. We thought, why are they splashing just with the views of one shopkeeper? But actually, when you read the letter that he's written to Mr Gauke, it begins, "What a pity you don't get out into the real world." So he's not taking any prisoners. It's quite a compelling letter.
OK, the Daily Telegraph. Should we move on to the Daily Telegraph? Tebbit leads new rebellion over rates. Appear among 3 former trade secretaries to demand reforms to rising business taxes. So it looks like it's not just going to be the public and business owners that are going to be fighting for this. There could be some political comeback as well. Yeah,
what's interesting in this article is you see sort of a bit of cross-party agreement between 3 influential people from different parties, taking a similar line on it. And it's also mentioned in this story here, which we don't see in the Daily Mail thing, I don't think, that this isn't just going to affect businesses, not just the private sector, but the NHS, for instance, is going to be affected as well, because, of course, it owns premises. It's got to pay these rates as well, so that's quite interesting. It's not just businesses that... I
wonder if the knock-on effect is what we end up paying as well for goods and services as well. They've got to get the money from somewhere.
Sure it will be, yeah, and that's the thing. And inflation is already starting to creep up, and this could just be.
Well, there was a lady interviewed on the telly earlier on, and I think the estimates were that her business rates were going to go up from 20-something thousand to 47,000. And the only way, I guess, is to pass that on to your customers.
An interesting story also on the front page of the Telegraph. Savile case prompts warning over street names. I knew there was a Jimmy Savile street in Scarborough, but there seems to be quite a few of them, but it's raised concerns over other possible street names as well. Yeah,
well, apparently there are hundreds of sort of pathways, street names, plaques named after Jimmy Savile. I'm sure they've all been changed by now. But yeah, there's advice from the Local Government Association, which is rather incredible. It's one of those stories you have to look at the top of the page to see if it isn't April the 1st. But basically, councils are being advised, don't name streets after people, just in case in the future at some point it turns out they're paedophiles or involved in some other unseemly behaviour or criminal activity. So it's
but
quite
where
remarkable.
Do you draw the line?
Or how can you possibly... Well, you draw the line by saying we're never going to do it again. So
yeah, then you end up with a town with Street A, Street B, Street C, Street D, really boring names. I think as well. I think Marcus Jones, who's the Minister for Local Government, he makes the point that actually it's a nice way of honouring heroes. It's a good way of recognising if someone's done something special. So the idea that you would just bring in a blanket ban.
Just in case
seems ludicrous to me.
Sledgehammer to crack a nut. And there's a great quote from Darren Rodwell, who's the leader of Barking and Dagenham Council, who says that if this was thought up years ago, Churchill would not have places named after him, and we'd probably have to thought twice about Trafalgar Square.
Exactly.
Because or Nelson Mandela Street, or it's a shame. What does it take to change the name of a street quickly? which is what they did. I mean, I think Scarborough Council were very, very quick to get rid of Jimmy Savile Road. We're going to look at the FT now. There is actually a lot of fantastic business stories around at the moment. The Unilever's snub to Kraft Heinz as well. I think that's going to be a story that's going to crack on. But you've found quite an interesting story, haven't you, on the front page, about the pound coin, the future of the pound coin.
Well, yeah, this is David Gauck, again, the Chief Secretary of the Treasury. Can't keep him out the papers tonight. When he's not focusing on business rates, he's warning people that they're going to have to spend their pound coins, the current style of pound coin.
They're great to save.
By October. Because they reckon they've worked out that there are £433 million worth of pound coins sort of not in circulation. They're either down the back of your sofa, in piggy banks,
as I joked
under
before,
the couch.
I don't think there's any in our house, sadly. But
I'm rubbish. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of viewers that are with me on this. I'm a bit rubbish at change. I don't know. I just tend to just leave it everywhere. So I've got one of those barrels that you have in the bottom of your wardrobe, and if I find a pound coin, I just put it in there.
Well, you're going to have to raid that before October. Or
so we've now got to raid our
worthless.
piggy banks to keep the economy going.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money. It's nearly £500 million. It's incredible.
And children love saving £1 coins.
Well, I suppose they could start saving the new style, which is going to be a 12-sided pound coins. The whole thinking behind it is apparently the current style of pound coin is very, very easy to forge. So
the saddest thing is when you do go into your piggy bank to get a few quid because you can't find any money anywhere else.
Been there many times.
Oh, we all have, because I can't believe I'm raiding the piggy bank.
It is important for kids, though, if they've saved, their hard-earned pocket money, they need to make sure that they cash it in before.
Sometimes they've got more money than we have in their piggy banks. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's where it's all gone wrong. We can save the NHS. OK, well, if you've got any pound coins, start spending them, I suppose. So that's one of the big stories in the FT tomorrow. Much more about Unilever, by the way, in the FT, which doesn't look like that's going to go away. And let's move on to the Times, which dedicates its front page, or nearly all of it, to two sporting heroes, the Olympic champion hockey players Kate and Helen Richardson-Welsh are receiving the OBE and MBE at Buckingham Palace yesterday. So they've gone with a very different, almost uplifting story. Maybe we needed it, Kevin.
Yeah, and the honours system gets a lot of criticism, quite rightly. I think it gets used by departing prime ministers to sort of reward political cronies, and it sort of leaves a bad taste in the mouth and taints the whole process. But I think this is thoroughly deserved. You know, remember it was the Olympics was incredibly successful for Team GB, and Kate and Helen Richardson-Welsh were obviously part of the surprise gold medal winning women's hockey team, which beat Holland in the final. Dramatic game, and yeah, it's nice to see people being rewarded for something that, as you say, it's very uplifting, which is something that we kind of need right now. There's a lot of doom and gloom around.
Kate's retired now. I mean, what a high to go on. But there's just so much happiness to their story, isn't there?
Oh, it's lovely. It's a really nice story. I remember watching the game, and it went to penalty, and we won in penalty, so it was really exciting. But they're married as well, of course, so it's a really great day for them. And I was reading earlier that Kate had said that she'd wanted to be a PE teacher when she was at school, and that she would have been happy with that. But she said she feels like this is being in a movie. She said it's so exciting. So it is lovely that they were both there. I think they're dubbed hockey's golden couple.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
So great day for both of them. But it was very significant in terms of GB women's hockey. So it was our first Olympic gold. So they've done a lot for the sport, and I'm sure lots of girls around the country will be getting
Sport's
getting
done a
involved.
lot for the country, isn't it? We've got to leave it there. Lindsay, thank you very much. Also, thanks to Kevin as well. Thanks for taking us through the papers. Don't forget, you can actually see the front pages online on the BBC News website. It's all there for you 7 days a week at bbc.co.uk/papers. And if you've missed the programme or you want to watch it again because you enjoyed it so much, it's always there on the BBC iPlayer. Thanks to Lindsay and Kevin. We'll see you again soon, and thanks to you for watching. Good night.